Joining us now on the line, a man who used to talk about the San Jose Sharks on television. He's Drew Remenda, and he joins us now in Marek vs. Wyshynski. Hello, Drew. How are you?
Wow, that is the most dour, sad intro I think there's ever been when it comes to me.
Drew, thank you for pulling yourself out of that bottle and joining us here on the podcast today. We know it's not the easiest.
I can't afford the
times.
bottle anymore. I'm unemployed.
You don't even drink to begin with, Drew.
Exactly,
crying out loud.
Exactly. I didn't drink to begin with, and I thought, well, after the Sharks, finally had caught up to my act, that when they kicked me out the door, I thought maybe I should take up drinking, but I can't afford to now.
Hey,
all right, go ahead, Marek.
Hang on,
ahead, Marek.
but before we get to what happened with the San Jose Sharks, we're just talking a little bit about sort of goofy things that broadcast teams have been strongly encouraged to say or perhaps not say on the air. Bringing up the example of whether it's a Hyundai or a Datsun or a Honda. The old LA Kings in the early 70s. It was Bob Miller. Okay,
Bob Miller tells the funniest story about that is that it was Datsun.
Oh, was Datsun. Okay, we're trying to figure out which one it was.
Datsun. It was back, and it was strongly suggested, and Bob tells the story because you know how great Bob is. Bob is like the funniest guy out there. He does the voices and everything else. He was strongly encouraged to say things like, "There goes Dion up the ice, streaking up the ice like a Datsun."
That's
stuff
right.
Like that. Try to work stuff into the broadcast, or try to work your sponsors in the broadcast. But listen to Philadelphia Flyers now. Per Jimmy has to go and scores the Tasty Cake. Was it Tasty Cake's goal or whatever it's called?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got to put the Tasty Cake's goal in there. It's we get, as you guys know, we get encouraged to do all kinds of things. But I would like to say that I was I can't say I am anymore.
Oh.
I was the sponsor. I would hammer sponsors as far as like all the time. I would say we always did the Lexus keys to the game.
Yeah.
I would hit the Lexus keys to the game 15 times during the game in the remote hope that one day Alexis would show up at HP or SAP Center for me. One day. Take it for a drive. That's all.
With a big teal ribbon around it. Drew, this one's for you. Thanks for the mentions, buddy.
Exactly. And so, but it did happen once for me because Pepsi is a sponsor, and I legitimately, and Jeff, you see me, I drink Pepsi I drink it like it's water, and I drink 4 or 5 a day. And I would literally open a Pepsi on the air just as we started so that you could hear it right close to the microphone until Sean Madison, our producer extraordinaire from Comcast, said, "Stop doing that." But it worked because Pepsi, one day I showed up at my desk and there was about 10 cases of Pepsi there.
Wow. Well, if you were drinking Pepsi like water, I can only assume you were drinking Diet Pepsi.
No.
That is water.
No.
Drew, you... Okay, let's get to the news here.
Sure.
Can you give us a sense of the timeline on things? When did you get a sense that you might not be back with the Sharks next season?
Right after Game 7.
Really?
What?
Right. Yeah.
Why?
Just a conversation I had with I had a sense because I had a conversation with our chief operating officer, and it was a brief conversation. And John is a terrific guy, and he's treated me like a gentleman, been very compassionate with me, but after Game 7, we lost to LA, and I just had a quick talk with him around the corner, and we were all devastated of it. We just couldn't kind of believe what happened. But he just said to me, he said, "I need to talk." He said, "We'll talk soon." And just the way he said it, I went, that's interesting. And I had an inkling. You can ask my wife. I had an inkling from that time until I came home right after Game 7, of course, because I commute back and forth, and then a couple of emails exchanged. I went down and had a talk with John, and the talk ended up with me not having my contract renewed.
Was there any sense from them that they were looking to keep you around if you changed some things, or was it's time to move on?
It was just time to move on. Then John Turturro was terrific. He just said, we want to take the broadcast in a different direction. He was, he treated me right. If you're ever going to get shown the door, John Turturro and the Sharks did it the right way. Doug Wilson called me after. I met with Doug. Todd McClellan called. Went with lunch with Todd and Jay Woodcroft, who on the coaching staff, who I have so much respect and admiration for. I didn't get escorted out of the building or anything like that, and I was allowed to go downstairs and clean out my desk, and technically I'm still an employee until June 30th, and that's when my contract ends, and they have taken care of me. They have done everything. Like I say, if you're ever going to be shown the door and say, we don't want you around here anymore, that's the way to have it done. They were first class all the way in that regard.
And he's a relatively new executive, CEO of the San Jose Sharks. Do you think this is a case of the new CEO comes in and wants new coat of paint on the franchise?
Yeah, I think so. I think one of the things is that, the way they went out this year certainly didn't do the franchise any favors, and everybody knows that. Nobody's looking at, we had a 111-point season. They know there's changes that have to be made, and maybe all angles. And so they looked at the broadcast and thought, well, maybe we need a new voice in there. Maybe they need a guy in there that's just different from Drew. It's just as simple as that. I mean, I like to think that Randy and I did a really good job. In fact, I'm pretty confident that we did. We just won another Emmy on Saturday.
I know.
So 5 Emmys tell me that we did a pretty good job. I've had tons of people throw their phone and text and everything else, excluding Jeff, you being one of the first guys. So I appreciate all that, and I know that I did a good job. But it's just, as Doug Wilson said when he let Ron Wilson go, when he didn't renew Ron Wilson's contract, and he kind of said the same thing to me. Sometimes the class needs a new professor. And I think I hope it's as simple as that, and it's not something, where I did something nefarious and I, hurt people and said the wrong thing at the wrong time. I was told that I didn't do anything wrong, that it was just a matter of they wanted to go in a different direction. It was a George Costanza, it's me, not you moment.
Did they give you a sense of what that direction might be? Because, if to use the professor analogy, usually the professor's moved out when he's lost his fastball, but you haven't, and you and Randy had amazing chemistry, and you and Randy were a must-listen to broadcast for a lot of us. What were you doing that they don't want to be done anymore, that they'll bring in someone else to do differently?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know the answer to that at all, Greg. I mean, I guess I should have asked that question. I wish you would have been beside me when they said, hit the bricks. But I don't know. I really don't. And I've thought about it. Obviously, you think about it a lot. I've been with that organization for 20 years. First as assistant coach, then as a radio, then TV, and I truly, truly love that organization, and I love the people in that organization. There's so many people that mean so much to me that that was the hardest part about leaving, was to say goodbye to them. So many of them are just dear friends now, and that was the toughest part about walking out. And the other thing was too, it was hard when John Tortora said, I can't remember how the conversation went after, and it was like later on in the day he caught up with me and he said, I can't remember how it went, but the last thing he said to me was, "Hey, you're a Shark," and that's when it kind of hit me, and I went, "No, I'm not anymore." People have always said, people have texted me saying, "You're a Shark, you're a Shark, you're always." No, I won't be. I'm gone. So it was. I think Doug Wilson and I had a conversation about it, and he was more than gracious and wonderful about our time together. I was assistant coach when he was our first captain, and he's doing everything he can to call people, and so is John Tortora to help me get a new job. But there wasn't really a sense of, or it wasn't really if you do this, we would like to keep you around. That did not come up at all. It was quick and as painless as you can have when you're told to hit the road and see you later. But there was no sense of, if you were to change something in your broadcasting style, that you'd be back. I think they just wanted a time. They just wanted someone new to deliver the message.
Now, Drew, you're not on Twitter, but if you were, you would know the outpouring of love for Drew Remenda since the news broke yesterday, and continues on as this podcast continues. The tweets keep coming in about Drew Remenda, and can't believe that he's gone. Again, this has only been publicly under 24 hours, but What's the feedback been already from fans, from colleagues, from people around the industry, from people that have just called you randomly that you haven't heard from for a long time? What's the reaction been?
I've had actually quite a bit. The people they've been great. I mean, they've been really positive. They've been really nice and wonderful. My kids, Davis and Donovan, my twin boys, obviously they've known for as long as I have about what happened, and so they've been begging me that can I go on Twitter? Can I go on Twitter? Can I go on Instagram? And so last night when it all broke, I said, okay, now you guys can go. So they took pictures of me and sent it out, and then they were ecstatic about the fact that I was at one time trending on Twitter. They were, I'm going to brag. I've won 5 Emmys. I've been in the National Hockey League for 20 years. I've done a lot of things for them as a dad. I think I like to refer to myself as the cool dad. Although they tell me that if I do refer to myself as the cool dad,
you're not.
I'm not cool.
That's right.
Regardless, I think I've been a pretty good dad. That was, I think, the proudest they've ever been of me.
Look, Dad's trending on Twitter.
Dad's trending on Twitter. And Davis, before I went to bed that last night, he came up to me and said, Dad, no matter what, this is my 17-year-old son. He goes, Dad, no matter what, one thing they can't take away from you, at one time in your life, you were number one trending on Twitter.
That's right. Take a screen cap, kids. Take a screen capture of this one, kids.
And that was it. So the outpouring of support from people, and it's from guys, Jeff, you and John Shannon and, Daryl Ray in Dallas, Johnny Forsland. There's so many people that have sent me emails. Dee Lombardi's wife, the great Wanda May Lombardi. So many people have reached out to me via email or text, and it's nice. It's a nice little moment in your life where you think, boy, you've got a lot of support out there. Now, next year, if I'm moving my family under a freeway, I'm hoping that support will still be around, but I won't know because I won't be able to afford a cell phone.
Well, you know who this is actually good for in broadcasting? Everybody who has to go against you every night on NHL Ties.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Because you dominate NHL Ties. And right now, NHL Ties just tweeted, listening to Drew, hashtag Tie99 forever, Remenda on MVSW right now is killing us.
They were, you know what, honestly, and they already know this, they've been fantastic. That thing starts out, and Davis, my son, was the first guy to mention it to me. He goes, Dad, do you know there's things called NHL Ties? And I went, no, and he told me about it. So, of course, me and how vain I am, I got so jacked up about it. And so I looked it up right away, and I went, and this is when Dave said, you should go on Twitter. I said, I'm not going on Twitter, but I'm going to own this. I guarantee I'm going to own this. And it became a huge contest between everybody. The first thing, I guarantee you, and I'm not lying, the first thing I would check after a game, because we were always a late game,
Yep.
As if I was first star. and then there was one time in NHL Ties. There was one time NHL Ties said my tie was a little crooked. The dimple was a little offset.
Ooh,
I was so mad.
Dimple issue.
Because you know me and my dimple. I mean,
I know it's your calling card.
That,
yep.
and then they don't know, but I lacquer it after I get it tied. That I had it set. It was perfect, and then they said it was off center. I was a little bitter. But they've been great. I'm that site is to give me my own hashtag Tie99 is an honor.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, a listener named Ashwin says, tell Drew that some of us want to thank him for turning us into Sharks fans from the day we were born. So that's the level of connection that you have with that fan base. Only because I know it's on the mind of a lot of people that love you and love your work. But can you give us a sense of what the conversation was with Randy Hahn about this?
It was between. What people don't know about Randy and I is we don't like each other very much. We're not close. He actually texted me. Good riddance was what he texted. That's all that we've had. No,
awesome.
He phoned me. I was actually at the airport, and he said, "Are you about to get on a plane?" I said, "Yeah, about to get there." And he goes, "What the hell?" And I said, "Well, I'll call you after." And we had It wasn't like last time when I left to go to Hockey Night in Canada and I was crying on the air, which is really one of my most embarrassing moments, and I wish YouTube would finally take that down. It was fine. It was he and I had talked all the time, of course, and so I kind of had that inkling, and I passed it on to him, and he mentioned, he goes, well, you're right. And I said, yeah, the one time I didn't want to be, and it's been back and forth. He's just a great friend, guys. I would love to tell you something nasty and terrible about him, but I literally cannot. He's one of the best there is. And this is what I'm really going to miss, is that I never went into a day of work with Randy where I didn't end up laughing about something totally stupid. That he didn't make me cry out in laughter. We'd be on the plane, and he'd be my little tourist. As we take off, he'd take all these photos and then post them, and I'd look at him and go, it's the same takeoff every damn time. Why do you do that? But he'd make me laugh. I mean, he'd do it all the time. And so I truly, he is definitely going to be the biggest thing I miss. I literally love the guy. Again, I'd like to tell you he's a terrible person, but he's not. He's wonderful.
When you look back at your time with the San Jose Sharks,
right.
both in the broadcast booth, on the bench as well, maybe the answer is, the Craig Cox goal, the first one in franchise history, the first time the team made the playoff, maybe that time that Jamie Baker shouldn't have passed the puck and should have shot instead. Maybe it's Garpenloff ringing it off the crossbar. I don't know what it is, but when you look back at your time with the San Jose Sharks, what's the first memory of hockey that comes to mind?
Wow. Our first win against the Calgary Flames. And our first big loss, there's two of them, the first win against the Calgary Flames and the first big loss against the Pittsburgh Penguins. Actually, three of them. We lost the first one against the Calgary Flames was really special at the Cow Palace, and being with George Kingston and Bob Murdoch was amazing. The first big loss against the Pittsburgh Penguins, we walked off the ice to a standing ovation. We got smoked 8-0, and I said to George Kingston, I said, "Wow, that was really nice." And George Kingston said, "Yeah, how long do you think that's going to last?" And we were in Minnesota one night, playing against the Minnesota. This is the first couple of years. We were in Minnesota against the North Stars at the time, and we were getting beat. I think it was 4-0 after the end of the second period, and I was upstairs most of the time with George and Bob. And I came downstairs, and I was really mad. And and George would always say, "Okay, what do you see?" And I'd tell him, and I was getting more and more angry as the conversation went on. And George would take it all in. We weren't working, we weren't doing this, we weren't doing that, and then George said, "Well, why don't you come upstairs? Or why don't you come downstairs, stay on the bench?" This is my first time on the bench in an NHL game. I said, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah, come on." Huh. So I stood on the bench, and for 20 minutes, I saw a team work their ass off, do everything they could possibly do to try to win a hockey game, but they just simply weren't good enough. And I was humbled by it, humbled by how hard they worked and how much they sacrificed. And I'm talking about the Sharks. And I walked into the dressing room after, and Bob Murdoch looked and said, "What do you think?" And I said, "I think I've just been taught a lesson." And George Kingston turned and looked and went, "Maybe." And that was my first lesson on how hard it is to win and how much guys sacrifice and dedicate themselves to it. Sometimes the other team's just friggin' better than you. Yeah. And those are the three from the first year. Those are the three that really strike me as memories of great joy, despair, and a memory of, you know what, you got to appreciate the guys that are out there and how hard they work. And if you have that appreciation, if you have that little bit of understanding, you can send a message, and you can work with them on an even on a scale of mutual respect. And that's what I really learned that first. Those are the first three memories, or the first memory that I think about that first year that really started to shape how I felt about the Sharks.
And I guess finally for me, we'd be remiss if we didn't at least tap this amazing brain of yours for some knowledge.
Sure.
You mentioned sometimes the other team simply better than you.
Right.
I think that's one theory about what happened between the Kings and the Sharks in round one. The other team simply was better than the Sharks. But that loss has led to much concern and consternation from the franchise about what to do next, with Doug Wilson going as far as using the R-word rebuild.
Yeah.
If you were GM, president, grand poobah, master of the San Jose Sharks, what would you do this offseason?
I would. Wow, that's a great question. Jeff, I heard you guys talking on Hockey Central Hockey Central at noon today with Doug and Nick about Joe, and would Joe go somewhere in New York or someplace like that, Chicago. It would be hard pressed for me to trade a guy like Joe Thornton. I know, what people say about him, but I've seen this guy every day. I see what he does. I see how hard he works. Second in the league in assists, 13th overall in points, 13 in power play points, and the guy that he played with on his right wing had a career 40-goal year. That's not a guy who's really on the guy that you think, well, he's not producing for me anymore. I think Doug Wilson's got the right idea. When Doug said he's going to hand this team over to the younger guys, he wants them to take a bigger step in responsibility. I agree with that. I think Logan Couture and Joe Pavelski and Mark-Edward Vlasic and Tommy Wingels are some guys that can really put more of their footprint or stamp on the team. Does that mean Joe has to take a step back? Probably a little bit, but I think that would be good for Joe to take a little bit of step back. But I think he should still be a San Jose Shark. I wouldn't trade Patrick Marleau. He's a 30-goal scorer who can skate like the wind. I would upgrade a little bit on defense. They're going to need somebody who can move the puck, who can bring the puck, who can run a power play effectively and consistently, I should say. And I think they need an upgrade in goaltending. As much as I love Antti Niemi, and you guys talked about it today, Jeff, Alex Stalock did a great job this year, but it's pretty tough to be a number one goalie, and you never know if you've got a number one goalie until your number two goalie has to be that number one guy.
That's right.
So I don't think they need to do a lot of work, but I think they need to do a change in the way that the dressing room politics go. And I'm not saying politics is a negative thing, but just about how or who people look to when the other team comes back and plays a good series against you, and you're up 3-0, and then all of a sudden you're up 3-2. Mm-hmm. That in the dressing room, maybe they look to more people than just one or two guys.
Graduate some of that class.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Drew, a couple of things here before we wrap up and let you get on with your day, and we'll continue the podcast. Two things. AJ Strong submits Remenda on with Marek and Wyshynski, just proving how great he is. Biggest San Jose Sharks loss ever. And Chris Littman suggesting, please tell Drew we can't live without the quick quiz. All Sharks fans will have a lesser season without him. Now, how shall I frame this? If you don't find yourself in a broadcast booth next year, Drew,
yes.
We don't have any money, but
yes.
Greg knows how to make lasagna. Can we put you on hockey's first lasagna retainer as our field reporter, man out there in the field to report on all things hockey? On lasagna. I don't know how many times Greg will actually make you the lasagna, but he can make a lasagna. Mm-hmm. So this will be the world's first hockey lasagna retainer.
I'm not Garfield, guys. I would take Pepsi as a substitute, a reasonable and more than reasonable substitute, to tell you the truth. So Pepsi would be the one for me.
All right, so
that could be a deal that we would, we'd have to work out the details of it.
Yeah, sure, of course,
stuff like that. But cans and not bottles or things like that. But
our people will talk to your people. Our secretary will have lunch with your secretary. We're a sucker for a Let's Do Lunch. We'll get it all figured out. Drew, I'm going to echo everything that everyone's been saying on Twitter about you, and your children will tell you all about it, I'm sure. You're a class act, an outstanding broadcaster, and you know what? Chris's point is the right one. Sharks fans will have a lesser season without you in the booth next year, sir. Thanks so much for doing this today. Anytime,
guys. Thank you very much. You've always been fun to talk to and always been kind to me. I really appreciate it.
You're the best, bud.
Thanks, pal.
Hey, no
Take
problem,
care.
man.
Drew Remenda, the great Drew Remenda, now ex of the San Jose Sharks broadcast booth.